What we'll notice this evening is the assurance of salvation is actually very simple. It's very biblical, meaning it's not hype. It also is intertwined more intimately than perhaps we may have thought with all of the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. Also, it's a precious gift that each one of us can have every day and that we can share with others. But what I want us to do now is actually take a look at two verses that actually tell us as clearly as Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11, that the assurance of salvation is biblical, just like Exodus 20 says, clearly the seventh day is the Sabbath. This very first verse is found in Isaiah 32:17. And it's interesting to notice that the idea of assurance is not a New Testament novelty. This is actually part of the everlasting gospel, therefore the assurance should be in the Old Testament and in the New. And in this verse you have on your screen, Isaiah 32:17, we find that. And we see here, it says, the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness, and assurance. How long? Till your next failure? No, forever. Okay, now let's take a look at the New Testament. He that has the Son has life, and he that has not the Son of God has not life. These things have I written unto you that believe on the name of the Son of God, that you may what? That you may guess, that you may hope, that you may know. So this is the beloved Apostle John saying the same words as the gospel writer in the Old Testament. In other words, assurance of salvation is part of the everlasting gospel. Thus it's biblical, and it's not hype. Now, I was saying that this is the 11th time I've given this presentation, and at the end of the fourth presentation, this illustration that you're seeing on your screen actually came to my mind. It makes it easier to understand this plan of redemption and assurance of salvation. What you should see here is an employer and an employee. Pink is frustration, green is confidence. There are three ways that this employee, and project yourself a few years into the future, you're an employee. There are three ways that this employer can frustrate the employee. Number one, that the employee doesn't know what the employer expects. Secondly, whatever she thinks the expectation is, she doesn't think it's simple, reasonable, and doable, therefore she's not doing it. So what do you think will happen when the employer walks through the door? Panic. But turn that around. It's just as true on the positive. What happens if the employee knows what the employer expects? Say, sweep the floor. And she thinks, you know what? That's simple, sweeping the floor. It's reasonable, it's doable, and she's doing it. She's sweeping the floor. Now what's the response? No panic. Hi, boss. Do you realize that that's the same thing in this next illustration? The repentant sinner and the Savior. Here again we have pink, no assurance, green, assurance. The same is true. If the repentant sinner does not know what his Savior expects, doesn't believe it's reasonable, whatever he thinks that his Savior expects, and doesn't do it, what's the result? Panic. Anytime there is a last day event scenario, a seminar, anytime there is a crisis coming soon seminar, there's panic registering in the person's heart. But what happens if the reverse is true? What happens if that repentant sinner, you, myself, know what God expects, believes it's doable through Christ, and is doing it? What's the language of our heart? No panic. It's as simple as that. So what's the difference? We have gone from not knowing to knowing God's expectations. We have gone from thinking those things are impossible to they are possible, to not doing them to doing them, and we're eager to say, lo, this is our God.